All right, Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good evening, shalom. Welcome to another episode of the Big Daddy Liberty Show. You'll forgive me, folks, for it being on a Thursday evening and not Wednesday, as is usually the case. I got dropped by my guest last night, people. I couldn't do anything about it. But maybe God had a plan, because I've encountered let me call it another guest who I'll briefly say this about him. And you guys know me. I always butter up my introductions of my guest. Tonight on the Big Daddy Liberty Show, we look at the issue of the fracas, the ongoing fracas within the Zulu royal household. I know a lot of you are probably wondering what's going on. Maybe your knowledge of the Zulu nation doesn't extend as far as Shaka Zulu that you read in your textbooks, and are wondering today, why are we seeing what we're seeing today? Is a civil war looming within the Zulu nation? Of course, the media is playing this issue up, as they will, because controversy sells papers and the like. But I decided, no. Let's actually have this conversation in a sober, rational, and informed manner, to which, in that case, my guest tonight is going to help us do exactly that. I'm talking, of course, about Dalisu Buthelezi, pardon me, who is a Zulu historian and writer. Let me just bring him on. Dalisu, Baba, good evening.
Good evening to the show and all your listeners all over the world. Honored to be here.
Baba, it's very good to have you on, because again, from one Zulu to another, this matter, I think, is dominating the collective psyche of us as residents of KwaZulu-Natal, as we have gone through a traumatic period, right? The passing of the late King Zwelithini Big Zulu, and really I don't know how to call it, Dalisu, the turmoil, the momentary turmoil that it placed the nation in, but then the leadership we then also saw, the senior Zulu leadership, as led by the Prime Minister of the Zulu nation, Misuzulu, Buthelezi. Talk to me. Let me take two steps back before we get into tonight's topic. Firstly, who is Dalisu? Who am I talking to here tonight?
Dalisu is, as you can see, my surname is that of the Prime Minister of the Zulu nation, but you're not related. I'm also from Nongoma, the royal capital district. We've got 6 out of 7 palaces of the late king there in Nongoma. Grew up there, took the interest in researching Zulu heritage. Been doing this since 2014, if I'm not mistaken. Have written plays, and my approach to the whole story is sitting with senior elder people back at home, where we dissect and I learn from them. And my philosophy has been, if your version of history is not backed up by praise names or traditional hymns, then it's got a lot of gaps in it, because that's how we as Africans, or Ngunis or Zulus, record history and the events in our upbringing or in our lifetime.
Dali, I'm going to have a step into this matter in a very cautious way, by maybe taking, as I said, those 2 steps back. Let's look at the history, Kangane, on this issue. The late king, his ascending to the throne was also fraught with, let's say, conflict and disagreement. Can you take us back to the ascension of King Zwelithini and what happened around that, so that maybe it sets the scene for current affairs?
Yes, so it's another interesting story how King Zwelithini ascended the throne, and there were 2 battles. They are not as prominent in the public eye as we probably as the other one would show. The first one is the fact that King Zwelithini is not the eldest son. Number 2, he was born from the left side of the royal house. And what do I mean by left side? Because there's a right hand side, and the left hand side. And as Zulus will say, there's a throwing hand, which is the isandla sokudla, and then there's a catching hand, which is isandla sokhohlo. So your first wife automatically falls on your right hand side, which means she qualifies to give you a heir to the throne. Your second wife will go to the left hand, which means she doesn't qualify. The third one will go to the right, which means she qualifies. Fourth one, so all your odd numbers are your qualifying queens to give you the heir to the throne. And Zwelithini's mother was the second wife, so he was on the left hand side. And what happened is that the first wife only got the girls. The second wife had the Zwelithini. The third wife only had the girls again, and the fifth wife, which is actually on the side that qualifies, had two boys, which were actually older than Zwelithini. So what happened when King Beguzulu, actually he had a serious sickness attack. He almost died, and then after that sickness, he then came back to say, I nearly died without putting my house in order. That's how they say it. So then he then put it down. He took a couple of witnesses, went to the magistrate at the time, and actually told the magistrate that the heir to the throne is going to be King Zwelithini. And the big hoo-ha that King Zwelithini was from the left-hand side. So it was really, King Beguzulu had to do the reshuffling. So how that happens is that you take the second wife and put him under the house of the qualifying side. So they put Zwelithini's mother onto the third wife's house, which means she then qualified. She got all the benefits of the third wife's side. But again, the third wife only had girls. If the third wife had a boy, Zwelithini will only qualify if that boy passes away, because that's another important issue we're gonna get to when you get to Simakade and him being inserted into Queen Mantombi's royal house. So that's how then King Zwelithini got to qualify. So there was a minor conflict where the two boys that were older than him and their mother actually wanted to take the throne, but then the witnesses that were part of the signing of the will with the magistrate came afore and cleared that out. So that quarrel died, and then the issue was the uncle. There's a position which is quite big. By the way, it's no longer as big as it used to be. All the kings dating back to Senzanga Khona, you'll have Umntwana Omkhulu, the senior prince. And the senior prince is like your deputy king. And this is a position that is actually greater than the prime minister, as contrary to what we see today. The prime minister is a servant of the royal house. He doesn't make the rules. So Prince Mcwayizeni was brother to Bekuzulu, and then Bekuzulu made him Umntwana Omkhulu, which means the deputy king, and then he was then the regent to hold the throne while Zwelithini was still young, because Zwelithini was still in high school at the time when Bekuzulu passed away. So when the time came that the uncle was supposed to bring back the throne to Zwelithini, they say he felt very comfortable and enjoyed all the benefits and didn't want to let go of the throne. So it became a serious matter, because there's even assassination attempts. So in the praise names of the king, by the way, the opening lines of King Zwelithini's praise names narrates the history of the uncle refusing to give him back the throne. When they say in Londleno Pape Kandagamenzi, imhlaba awulalela umuntu omemezayo khala ngathi uyalila uthi igula likajama lichithekile ingqwele endala yakithi kwaMalandela. It means the senior brother in the house, because Malandela is the ancestor of the Zulu. The senior brother of the Malandela house is the one that is causing the mess, igula lichithekile, which means the container of food has spilled. And then it goes on. There's a line that talks to him trying to assassinate the king, the late king, where they say, "Yintulo." You will translate in writing. Yintulo ebande ngodonga kwaBhekuzulu. So it means he's a lizard that hid on the walls. KwaBhekuzulu is the name of the school in Nongoma. So just when you enter Nongoma, the school that was reserved for the princes and all the high people. So he was in school there when a hitman came in, and he was then sneaked out to save his life. And then that's what that line talks to when it says he's a lizard that hid on the wall and escaped from the Bhekuzulu crawl. So that was now the fight. Then he had to be moved to Wandebele, where his sister got married to, which is in Mpumalanga, and then he came back when to take the throne. And there was a big quarrel now between the senior prince who was on the throne and the prime minister, the same prime minister who's now fighting the same battle. He's the one who actually pushed away the senior prince to leave the throne. That is why even the press name will also say Dalisu Buthelezi ngokukhuthazela. So he was very brave and he pushed hard to believe in King Zwelithini that he was already ready. Yes.
Dali, let me come in here because I want to quickly summarize this brief history. And I think it's important insofar as it helps people understand that two things, actually. Number one, contestation of the throne is not a new thing. Number two, there is established culture and rules around what the succession from one king of the other looks like. Because I think those two things are going to be important as we then discuss what's currently happening. And perhaps let's get into that. So we then, pardon me, it's so hard to talk about the former king in past tense. It's so weird. We then had King Zwelithini Zulu. He reigned for a very long time. After that contestation and the like, established king, and then begins to take on wives, of course.
Yes.
And from this, we know there are, and you'll correct me, I think there's 6 wives, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, there's 6 wives.
6 wives. But there's rules around this, Dali, insofar as what determines where the heir comes from. So in Western culture, it would be the eldest son, right, who de facto becomes the king, and that's what decides the monarchy. But in Zulu culture, that's not the case. Can you quickly explain to us, how do we decide and decipher culturally where the king comes from, especially when you have a situation of polygamy, where there's multiple wives, for example?
So yes, an approach to that is in 2 folds, right? The first one is, while the father of the house is alive, he puts his house in order. So he calls the family and determines who will take the throne, or which wife is actually senior of them all. And if he didn't do that to a point where he passes away, then the default rules will apply. And one of the default rules will be the first wife will give heir to the throne, or the third wife, or the fifth wife, if there is more than 2 or 3. So what will actually happen? So there are cases that changes that order. And those cases will be, you marry the first wife, you find that she's not a virgin. You take in a second wife, and then you find she is a virgin. The father of the house has the right to change the order and give privilege to the one that he found pure. But that will be the case when he has actually gotten a chance to put his house in order, because he's the only one who can tell which one was sealed and which one wasn't sealed. But in the case that he passes without that being in order, then the first wife, the elder son, will automatically take the throne. And that order will stay like that. So the first, the third, the fifth, unless a daughter from another royal house comes into the play, then she changes the whole structure. It doesn't matter whether she's the second or the sixth or the fifth or the ninth. It doesn't matter. When she comes in, she becomes a senior wife. And the theory is, or the thinking is, the daughter of the king. So you will see that in a Zulu wedding, right? A wife will carry a knife. That knife means that woman is the one that dissects the meat. So he will cut the meat into pieces to say this one will go to wife number one, this piece will go to wife number two, and the daughter of the king cannot be served by a daughter of a commoner. So when she comes in, she's in charge. So she's the one who's going to decide which piece of meat goes to which house. And that gives her superiority over all the wives and all the rights. And now we've been hearing that, yeah.
Sorry, just very quickly, just for clarity's sake. So even though King Zwelithini had 6 wives, the fact that he took a wife from a royal household, in this case, Queen Mantomfi from the Swazi royal house, that immediately placed her at effectively as the prime wife, if I can call it that, who will then produce the heir. Am I understanding that correctly?
You are 100% correct. And people have been arguing now. Actually, they continue to argue that history doesn't exist. I will make another example. The mother of the prime minister, because the prime minister is the chief in the Buthelezi clan. He's our chief, right? Makoko, Princess Makoko of Dinuzulu, was the 10th wife to marry Matole Buthelezi, the king of the Buthelezi clan. Her lobola was paid by the Buthelezi clan. And when she came there, she moved from number 10 to being number 1 and gave birth to King to Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who's the heir to the throne. So the culture has been applied a number of times in different kingdoms and different chiefdoms. It's known. A wife, a daughter of the king, and actually in some cases there will be different kingdoms, right? And you check which kingdom is bigger. In this case, let's say there was another wife, maybe from a Buthelezi kingdom that married to Zwelithini. The kingdom of Swaziland is very big than any other kingdom except the Zulus in the Zulu in Zululand. So still Mantombi would have been senior to that wife. So that rule stands. That rule applies. It has been seen in other kingdoms. And I will make just one other example where things kind of were twisted a little. King Pumuzuzulu, Solomon, who Solomon was Dinuzulu's son. When he got to take the kingdom, he was already Christianity was already entrenched heavily in the kingdom. That is why you will see, even if when you look at the pictures, they will all come in traditional way. When it comes to Solomon, he's wearing a cap with a suit-like thing. And look at that strap that goes across the chest. It's got a cross. Because he had taken Christianity and the name as well, Solomon. That's a name that he's called because he went to sow in church as opposed to your strong traditional anointing or ordainment for the throne. And when he chose his first wife or senior wife, he chose, and guess who? The daughter of the priest, not the daughter. And at the time, there was the daughter of, by the way, one of the Buthelezi daughters of the Mnyamane house. And everybody thought because Mnyamane was the prime minister of King Cetshwayo, that is the biggest. Because in this case, there's no kingdom, right? So everybody's kind of equal. But again, there is abamnumzane, senior people, senior chiefs in the area. And Mnyamane or the Buthelezi clan was the biggest clan at the time to have married King Solomon. But King Solomon made a twist and chose the daughter of the priest or the of a pastor, because he was now a Christian. And fortunately for him, he had written a will down to say he is choosing the particular daughter and not the. Otherwise, the default would have been, if he hadn't chosen, the default would have been, who's the senior house of all these wives, and Buthelezi would have been, because Mnyamane Kangangelele was the prime minister of King Cetshwayo, so that house was the seniorest of them all if it wasn't for Christianity. So yeah, the rule has applied like that.
So, sorry, I was about to say, if you're just joining us, welcome to it. I'm in conversation with Dalisu Buthelezi Ushenge as he unpacks this issue for us from a perspective of being a Zulu historian and really a writer. I'm hoping at the end of the show, he'll be able to share with us where we can find his writing. Very interesting conversation tonight as we unpack the issue of the fracas within the Zulu royal household. Now, just very quickly, Dalisu, let me just quickly share this. Breaking news, King Misuzulu has just returned to the royal household with the lion. Just give me a second here. Let me put it on screen. And just as I do that, can I remind my audience, please, to hit that like button and to share this stream. As I'm trying to reopen this window that's just closed. Trust me and my luck for that to happen just when I need it. But maybe as I look for that screen again, Dali, let me maybe come to this point that you made, which I think is absolutely crystal clear, insofar as people understand now. Number one, there is a process. Culture determines it. It's written, and I say written in inverted commas, but it's cast in stone. Let me use that expression. Insofar as there's one of two methods in which the heir is picked. And the heir is not the same as saying the eldest son, as is the case in Western culture. So you can have the eldest son, inkosana, so to speak, but then you can also have the heir apparent, Khalifa, if I'm using the correct expression here.
Yes.
Okay. So in that sense, the heir apparent comes from a wife of the king who also came from a royal household. That determines who the next king will be. Now, in this case, we have two, and I'm just for the sake of being neutral, although I've got a preference, we have two rival kings, apparently, within the Zulu nation right now. We have King Misuzulu, Zwelithini Zulu, who, of course, was presented before the Zulu nation in a very public process. You'll remember, of course, it was televised. The will of the king was read. The process was explained. And there was a lot of transparency, if I can put it that way, insofar as the nation, the Zulu nation and the country at large, being told that this is the new king of the Zulus. Indeed, the expression Bayete started being made towards him.
Yes.
Then we had a rival, pardon me, just for the sake of it now, King Simakade, who is also, as we are coming to understand from the royal household, both of these individuals claiming kingship. Indeed, Prince Simakade recently, having gone through the ritual of Ungena Esbayeni, and upon that proclaiming from there, of course, with his faction of the families, that he is the king of all the Zulus. Dali, break it down for us. How is he right or maybe even wrong?
That's by the way, we've got candidate number 3. I don't know if you've seen the news. There's a candidate number 3.
We'll get into that in a moment.
So Prince Simakade's matter is quite an interesting one, and I was part of the people that followed it closely, and I did a lot of engagements with senior people back home to understand how was he qualifying or claiming to qualify, and his case is quite interesting. So firstly, he is older than Misuzulu by age. So those that pushed him were using the fact that he was traditionally inserted into Mantombi's womb, which then they claim that gives him the right to be the heir to the throne. So the first thing that you get from that line is that yeah, actually they do agree that Mantombi is the senior queen, because they agree that if he was inserted into Mantombi, then he automatically qualifies to be senior than Misuzulu. So they admit the seniority of Queen Mantombi in all in all Zwelithini's wives. So the second one is, then we must understand the notion or the thinking behind ukufakwa or being inserted into somebody else's womb, so to say. In this case, King Zwelithini had an affair with Simakade's mother, and they were about to get married, by the way. Even lobola was paid for Simakade's mother, but Simakade's mother never got married to the king. So we hear that King Zwelithini then they call it paying lobola for the baby. So he bought he traditionally bought the child back into the family, and he was then placed under Mntane Nkosi's care. And then him being the older one, and now brought traditionally into, and by the way, there was a lot of agreement and disagreement whether this ritual was actually done to put him into Mantombi's stomach. But either way, for us, the outcome or the final results remain the same. So the culture of being inserted into somebody's womb, and the idea, you remember that in polygamy, for instance, how we Africans did it is that I'll go to your family and take your daughter, marry her. And then maybe after a year, we realize that your daughter doesn't give birth to a boy. I'll go back to you as the father and say, hey, we've been trying with your daughter. She's not giving us a son. And then you will say, no, I've got a younger daughter that can come and assist her sister in giving you what you need. Then the younger sister will come, and she will be put in in his sister's house to help her get the son. Actually, the son that she gets is not hers. It's for the first sister that struggled to get the son. So the second daughter is not senior to the older daughter, that married first. She is there to help her. And in this case, Simakade being put into Mntane Nkosi's house, what you need to check first is that, is Mntane Nkosi failing to deliver on the mandate? No, she's not failing. She's got 4 sons that are alive and sound-minded. For Simakade, who's now put into this house, he will have to wait for all the 4 sons of Mantombi's blood to die first before he qualifies to take their throne. So if all those sons were gone and Mantombi was left with all the daughters, then Simakade will then qualify to take the throne as he was inserted into that. So those that were pushing him then said, no, he is senior, he was put into that house, then he qualifies to be the heir to the throne. But yes, you can go ahead.
No, I just wanted to interject quickly, just to understand the claim. So the claim by Prince Magade is that because he's the eldest, insofar as being the eldest, he was also, according to him, or his family at the least, inserted into Queen Mantombi, the main queen's family, the notion of being inserted into the womb, so to speak,
Yes.
Being adopted, basically. On that basis, because he's older rather than Prince Misuzulu. That is what he is arguing is his claim to the throne. Am I correct in that, in summarizing his argument?
You are 100% correct.
Okay.
That's the argument they're going with.
It brings us then to what you're making the last point now, which is obviously that claim clashes with the fact that Queen Mantombi herself, the main queen, the main wife, actually had her own sons, as you mentioned, 4 of them,
yes.
Thus rendering Prince Magate's claim moot, so to speak. There's the counter argument. There's the counter argument here that actually even the claim that he was inserted into the womb or adopted is actually not quite true, because the ceremony around that wasn't conducted. I don't know what your knowledge is around that. So maybe briefly touch on that. And as you touch on that, let's cross over to King Misuzulu now. His claim to the throne, the legitimacy or illegitimacy of that. Speak to that for me as we conclude.
Yeah, to be honest, I also don't know. I haven't seen proof with my own eyes that says there was a ritual. Simakade was ritually inserted into Mantombi's womb. I haven't seen evidence. I've heard different stories. So those in support of Simakade, they claim it was done, and those in support of Misuzulu and the Khangela royal house, they say that thing never happened. Interestingly enough, there is a book that Umntwana Uzeploni from the Mandlakazi house wrote, and he interviewed all the queens of the late king, and how Mantombi narrated the move of Simakade into Kwakhangela is quite interesting. And actually the opening line by Mantombi when she's supposed to now talk about his kings, she says, "My first son is actually King Simakade, who is in my royal house." And then she narrates how Simakade got to stay in Kwakhangela. She never, and this was before the quarrel and the wars and stuff. Mantombi just narrated that the child just loved Kwakhangela. She will skip school, and I mean after school she will take a bus and go all the way and pass Kwaketomtanda, where she was actually placed initially, to go and stay Kwakhangela. And fortunately, as I'm close to some of the people in royal house, some actually confirm that at one event in KwaMandlakazi, the Kwakhangela Mankengane house came, which is the sons, the princes, and they were led by Simakade. So Simakade did stay Kwakhangela. He was seen to be the senior son in the house. He did lead the princes in that house as a senior house. But whether really the ritual did take place, it's not clear. But it doesn't change the outcome. Whether he was or he wasn't, he will only qualify once the 4 sons of Mantombi have passed on. That's when he then gets to, because he's here to help them, to help Mantombi get a son. So when the sons are still here, his help is not valid. And when we come to Misuzulu,
yes,
really we haven't found anything, or I haven't found or seen anything that honestly disqualifies him, except for what they're saying, because they've come out, to complain about the behavior. He used to drink a lot. There's claims of drug abuse. There's claims of that he has slept with the cousins, he's got babies with cousins. All the things they're putting on the floor, and I always say it must be clear what we're fighting here. Are we fighting the character, or we're fighting the legitimacy of his appointment? So in our culture, the king is born, is not elected. You don't send a CV and we scrutinize you, and then by your character we give you the job. That's not how it's done. So if we go back to the customs, the king is born, is not elected. And what they're going with now, we don't know if the claims are true. For us, it doesn't matter. The day we change the culture, we need to all agree that no, we've changed the culture now. We are democratically, or we screen people as per the CVs to put them on throne. So as far as the qualification, so even if there was no will, that's why we don't even care if the will is forged or not forged. If you talk to Amakehla, the senior people back home, they tell you, Guti, in this crawl, in our crawl, we sent a cow to Wakangela, I mean, to Swaziland to pay lobola for the queen to give us a heir to the throne. So if you change that today, it means the royal house owes us those 200 cows. They must come back. And these are senior people, you know. So scrap the will, forge the will, remove Mdaninkosi from the picture, remove everybody, remove the will, because just say, let's go to the default. Who would automatically qualify? Senior people tell you, Manfombi will qualify because the nation went out to pay lobola for her to come and give us the heir to the throne. So there's no question asked when it comes to customs. Misuzulu qualifies by all colors. If you disqualify him, you're going to disqualify him about whatever character or behavior that you know of him that we don't know of and we haven't seen. So even if we've seen, we'll be like, oh no, put him on a program to fix him because he qualifies to be there. That's what
it's a birthright, ne?
It's a birthright, yes, and undisputed at this point in time. There's just no one that best qualifies for the throne than him.
Okay, Shenge, as we wrap up, because the final question really for me becomes where to for us as Zulus, because there's many other questions now that under the new leadership of Inkosi Misuzulu Zwelithini, pardon me. There's many questions we as Zulus need to answer, so to speak. But before I get to that, let me just recap for those who maybe are just joining and are wondering what's going on, where are we in the conversation. I'm in conversation with Zulu historian and writer Dalisu Buthelezi, who's really unpacked it for us quite nicely insofar as explaining the two claims, if you will, the one from the actual ordained, recognized king of the Zulu nation, that's Misuzulu Zwelithini, and the rival to the throne, Prince Simakade. And you'll notice me using that language now of King Misuzulu versus Prince Simakade, because I'm now pulling out my own colors in this debate. And again, it's not even a debate. I'm correcting myself as I go along here. I think the most of Zulus and the Zulu nation, Dali, and you'll differ or confirm what I'm saying, recognize King Misuzulu as the rightfully ordained king of the throne. As you answer that question, my final question would be this one. Where to for us as Zulu folk? Because to a large extent, there were lots of issues that were left unresolved, for example, by the previous king, insofar as the future of the Zulu nation. I'll just give two examples because we've run out of time, and thank you for indulging me with a little bit of extra time. There's quite a few issues that we need to unpack. There's still that large unspoken desire of perhaps even as Zulus calling for more independence insofar as building a Zulu nation that is prosperous, that's free, that is culturally relevant, and of course that develops a nation, if you will, for all Zulus. For example, Ingonyama Trust was something which the former king, pardon me, was defensive of, seeing what the national government was trying to do. Do all of these sorry, I don't know how to say this in English, do all of these wars, if you will, now fall upon Prince, or rather, correction, King Misuzulu?
Definitely. It falls on his lap hot like that. And I think for the first time, and fortunately, maybe it's something I can touch on. We were I led a group of youth to Wakangela when everybody was still on the line, undecisive which side they were taking. We had open discussions about, the culture of Fagwa, Prince Simakade's qualifications or claims and all those things. And after thorough indulging on the topic, we took the first march to Wakangela to say we as youth, we come out and we recognize Misuzulu, that, you know, history, the will, everything just corresponds to say Misuzulu is the right heir to the throne. And where I'm going that line is that we as youth, we've decided we're not gonna sit on the side and watch. We want a kingdom that as I drop an incoming call, we want a kingdom that works for the people, and we want to partake in helping the kingdom, you know, improve the lives of the Zulu nation. So yes, the first war will be that of the land, and we also believe that it's the serious battle that he's gonna have to fight, and we will be there with him to fight that war. Maybe back in the days there was a huge gap. I mean, in the former king, we as the youth didn't know how to engage, you know, the kingdom. And actually, when I planned the march to Wakangela, when I got there, they told me I was supposed to have gone to 4 different offices to obtain approval. So what actually helped was going straight, because it's so difficult to actually reach the throne. So this time around, we're saying we want to claim the king to be ours, as we are all youth, as per how we feel inside, and we want to work together. So that's going to be the first big thing that he fights. We hear, you know, here in South Africa, they are called the clever blacks, ne? People that says the Ngonyama land is useless. We want title deeds. I stay in rural areas. We have a plot. We've got a garden. It's big enough, you know, and we've never had to pay any you know, and we've never had to fight about the borders to say no, somebody's
Mm-hmm.
encroached. We live peacefully. We don't have street kids. We've got enough land. I just asked for land to build a business house. All I had to pay was 1.2, 1,200, to get a huge piece of land to put in what I wanted to put. And you know, those things you won't get anyway. So we are happy about the arrangement that we have in the Ngonyama land, in the rural areas, and what we can do with it. Yes, we understand there's chiefs that you know, charge crazy amounts, but we cannot now paint everybody with the same paint. So that's going to be the big war that he has to fight, and we believe that it's a fight worth dying for, you know, to protect the land. Because if you take away the
Absolutely.
land, we don't have the kingdom. The kingdom is made by the people and the land. If you take away the land, we're gonna have a verbal and you know, kingdom
Mm.
that doesn't control anything. So and maybe another big part I need to touch on, and I
Mm-hmm.
know I will chow your time, is the mandate of the king of the Zulus as far as the government is concerned. If I can tell you, the mandate is he's supposed to be a peacekeeper and a custodian to keep language and culture alive. That's it. He doesn't have any community developmental mandate and budget. And by the way, his certificate will say he is the chief of the Usutu Royal Tribal Authority, which means he actually doesn't have a right to go to Kwamandlakazi, which is a neighboring district, and build something there, because the chief of Mandlakazi has got full rights to that land. So we find that the our king's mandate and power is reduced almost to nothing, to like keep the language alive, keep peace. That's all you need to do. All this 8 million we hear about in the budget doesn't go to him as cash. A portion will be sent to arts and culture. Arts and culture, go facilitate the reed dance ceremony every September. Go facilitate King Shaga's day on the 24th of September. So there isn't really cash that goes to the kingdom for it to do any programs, you know, that can
Mm.
develop it. So those are some of the things that we need to challenge, around the mandate, around how the budget gets structured. Can this budget be used for something that is very developmental to the nation? And can we get youth mostly partaking in the affairs of the kingdom to have programs? Because some of us are very passionate about the topic. We don't mind, contributing. To give 5 kids a bursary from the the Royal Bafokeng is doing it because they were lucky the way they managed land and they got the mines, and those mines are actually doing quite a lot of things. We need to change some of the things back in Zululand as well, so that all the business that the mines that are there actually give back to the kingdom, and we will be pushing the king to drive those programs. We're not going to sit around this time around. Yeah,
absolutely. And I must be frank. I'm in full favor of effectively more autonomy, more freedom, if you will, for the Zulus as a nation. When I say this, people become very cagey and very defensive. But I always say I'm proudly Zulu. I have a saying on the show, Dali, which is "Don't call me black, call me Zulu," because when we say I'm Zulu, there's a culture, there's a language, there's a piece of land, there is a lineage, there's a history that I understand that is of me. When you say I'm black, I don't know. Americans have black people, the English have black people, you name it. So it's one of those few areas where I'm very, I must say I'm biased. But as a final thought, Dali, because we've really run out of time completely. Number one, how do the people reach you if you want to be found, maybe on your social media? And if how do you share your writing? Where can we find you?
So I'm active on Twitter. At Dalisu B is my handle, and I actually host Twitter Spaces since Twitter introduced Spaces, and we actually indulge ourselves in such topics with a lot of a lot of Zulus, which are youth, which are actually calling for the independent Zulu state. so it's where you'll find me active, and I share a lot of writings. Most of our fellow Zulu writers work on my page. So there's a couple of books that we are advertising. I think Babu Mdletshe, the praise singer, actually published a book. I will be getting my hands on it on Saturday at the coronation. It's one of the books I'm looking forward to because he's walked with the king. He was telling us he was still a teenager when the king called him into the kraal to choose a cow when he was about to announce that he wanted to take Manfombi. That announcement was made by slaughtering a huge cow there, and he said I was still a teenager at the time. So he's got so much knowledge. He's worked with the king with passion. So I'll be looking forward to get that book. My first book, the one that we just published now, I was assisting one of my senior people that I was talking about from back home. It's called Amakawe Aizola Gitwa Zulu. For now, it's only written in Zulu. You'll get the details on my social media page. The one that I'm busy with, hopefully I can publish by December. It's the regiments. I'm looking at the regiments of the Zulu kingdom dating back to Senzangakhona. We're covering who fought in which war and which regiments were which people. It's quite a fascinating writing. We are noting down the names. You know that when you go to Sandwana, you will find all the names of the British Reds Army there, and even the horses sometimes, but you won't find the Zulu regiments that fought and died there. So that's what I'm documenting for each war. Because when you talk to senior people back home, they'll tell you that, oh, the great grandfather of this house fought in that war. And this war and this war. So that's what we're documenting, looking at the regiments, and sadly at the passing of the general commander, Babu Mkilichi Gantlego, who passed away also. And he's been with the king as well for quite a long time. So yeah, that's the work that I'm busy with. There's a play that I wrote, by the way, in 2018. It's staged at Joburg Theatre, which is called Undoni, the Zulu warrior's wife. We're telling a story on how the colonial power changed the way our fathers and our mothers lived from 1879, linking that to the Fees Must Fall movement of 2016, because those two are actually very much related, though you can't see it. So the story was quite detailed, talking about it. It's a musical. So yeah, that's some of the work that I'm busy with.
Absolutely. That is of course Dalisu Buthelezi Ushenge, joining us on the show. His inaugural appearance here on the show, and what an appearance it has been. Quality insight into our history and really the current affairs of the Zulu nation. He's someone who will definitely have again here on the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Dali Ngabonga Baba, thank you very much.
Sibonga kakhulu. I will be at the coronation on Saturday. See you after that.
Baba, I think I'll be there too. I might not miss that one. But with that being said, let me say a big thank you to you, dear viewer. Apologies for running over time. I think you'll agree the content was absolutely spot on. And this is the kind of stuff we want to do more of as a feature of the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Quality guests, knowledgeable, and learning something on the particular topic. With that being said, thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow bright and early for my daily news analysis show. That's Ivuka Nazo, the morning show. Tomorrow, very, very interesting topic and a rant by me. Goodness me, my BP, as we say in Zulu, hi, yeah, was triggered by some of the topics I covered. And then, of course, I'll see you again on Sunday, 8 p.m. here for Liberty and Friends. So until then, enjoy your evening. I'll see you next time, and never trust a commie.